this.
My permissions are
Messed up.
not good. Yeah.
So as a disclaimer, we record the first part of this so that we can share this with members that were not able to participate today live at noon. And so we're recording this, and then as soon as we finish the dialogue, we'll open it up to questions and answers, and that's when we'll stop recording. So feel free to jump in with any questions that you might have regarding anything that's going on in the legislature, what you're hearing, or bills that you are particularly interested in. So moving along, I'll kick this over to Bridger Mahlum, our Government Affairs Director, who's in the Capitol, and he's with Senator Fitzpatrick, has been a real star for us, particularly as it relates to the COVID-19 liability bill. So with that, Bridger.
Hey, thanks, Todd. And yeah, I'm sitting here with Senator Fitzpatrick, Senator Steve Fitzpatrick. He represents Great Falls, Senate District 10. And this is his 6th legislative session. And not only is he in leadership in the Senate, but is also now, I believe, 2-time chair of the Senate Business and Labor Committee. And so this is a lawmaker we have worked with on just several bills. And I think you have plenty of champion of business pins from us, so plenty of lapels to choose from. But no, we're just thrilled to work with him on so many bills and to have him join us here just for more folks to get to know who he is and the great work he's doing, because that's important for folks to know. And so, Senator, thanks again for making the time. And I think just first off, we're always just curious. I mean, what got you interested in public service anyway, just from a high level, and then staying committed to it through today and I'm sure beyond today?
Sure, that's a good question. I get asked a lot. I was actually I was born here in Helena, and my dad used to do government relations. He was a lobbyist for many years, and I used to come up to the Capitol and see it in progress. And I thought, it was really a tremendous learning experience. You really learned a lot about the process, and you really got to see that you could make a difference. And when I had the chance to run for office, I thought, why don't I do this? There's things that I'm passionate about and I care about, and I want to be part of the legislative process and come here and hopefully do some good things for the people of Great Falls. So that was really my motivation for running. And as time has gone by, you gain experience and knowledge in the process, and I think you get better at legislating, and that ability to make a difference has really kind of come through over the years. And so that's why I like coming back. It's really an honor to be here, and I'm very appreciative of the people that voted for me.
Love it. And so given your experience, I mean, you obviously, every legislator starts to kind of get more interested in spend more of their time in certain policy arenas, because you really, I mean, as a citizen legislator, you have to vote on everything, but a lot of people's expertise can start to narrow in. And so you're an attorney by trade, and you've taken a great interest in like legal reform type bills. And that's important in Montana Chamber, because we care about a predictable legal environment to do business. And in fact, the reason why we're sitting together here in the Capitol Bay is because we just came out of a bill hearing on a Montana Chamber priority bill on medical expense recoveries. That, of course, in addition to the leadership you displayed, Senator, on carrying Senate Bill 65, COVID liability protections. Could you touch on what passing Senate Bill 65 especially meant to you, and also just the importance of tackling legal reform in the legislative process?
Sure. Yeah, like you mentioned, I'm an attorney. I've been in private practice now for about 16 years. A lot of that work has been in civil litigation. So I have a background in that before I came here, but I also have a background in insurance. So I mean, I like to work on those issues. I don't like to do them exclusively. I mean, I think you've seen my bill list. I like to carry a wide variety of bills just because it's interesting, and you learn something with every bill you do. But when you're in my shoes and you're representing people, and I represent a wide variety of people. There can be contractors, insurance companies. I represent insurers that go head to head with insurance companies. I represent homeowners associations. People involved in personal injury accidents. I mean, I've done both. I've done plaintiff and defendant, and I do like to do both because it makes you a better lawyer. But you just see things over time, and those things sometimes they bother you, and that's where I've seen a couple of the bills that we brought, or you catch things in other fields of law, and it doesn't seem right. So that becomes inspiration for some of my bills. Now, with the COVID bill, 65, I was just in an interview, and really the inspiration was obviously you contacted me, but I was out buying fence posts for my campaign.
There you go.
And I went to Home Depot, and there was a big long line. And I thought, this is crazy. They're only letting 75 people in the building. I got to go somewhere else because I got to get this done here. And so I drive around and I go to a different store and I buy my signposts. And as I was walking out, I thought, we have all these crazy rules all over the place, and this is getting all driven by the legal departments. We need to do something to give people some sanity with regard to COVID-19, because the way I look at it, when it comes to civil liability, it's a form of regulation, and it can become a tax. So, and really, when you're a Republican, you're supposed to be for less government and to limited government. And when we just allow this unlimited civil liability with no parameters, no guidelines, nothing to give any people any guidance as to what you're doing on, we are regulating people and we are taxing people. And I think that's really the key to Senate Bill 65. We're trying to give people that good faith basis for how to operate their business and how to do various things, so that they don't go down this rabbit hole of spending unnecessary amounts of money and feeling like they can't operate their store or keep their church open or whatever they want to do. It's just to allow people to kind of get back to normal, because I think what we're seeing is when things aren't normal, we're having, crime is up, we're having all kinds of social problems. And I think a lot of it is just due to the uncertainty created by COVID and all the things that have spawned off of it.
Yeah, well, and we just absolutely appreciate your leadership on that bill. It means the world to this Montana business community that just needed some certainty going forward with something that we don't know how long is going to be around. I mean, there's still a lot going on with that. So, Todd, why don't you jump in? What else would you like to bring up here?
Well, since you two were in on a bill just before this call, why don't you talk a little bit about that, because you noted that it was a chamber priority bill. So why don't you talk a little bit about that, Bridger and Senator Fitzpatrick?
Yeah, so Senate Bill 251, and we've been working with Senate Majority Leader Kerry Smith on this, and I've alluded to it a little bit in prior weeks' editions of Capital Connection, that this is among our suite of legal reform bills that we think are common sense approaches to reasonably reducing the cost of litigation, and ultimately, in this case, business liability insurance for Montana businesses, because we want to put fairness back into how medical expense recoveries are calculated in personal injury lawsuits that oftentimes involve a business. And with this legislation, we're certainly prioritizing that an injured party gets to be made whole based on the expenses that person or their insurer had incurred. But anything above that just becomes these damages out of thin air that fall on the defendant to pay. And that really becomes problematic when it comes to a predictable legal environment. But Senator, I turn over to you to some thoughts you might have on that one as well.
Yeah, I actually probably know a little too much about this, because the Supreme Court case that allowed what we call these phantom damages, that my law partner was involved in it. So the way it works is that if you're a claimant in a personal injury lawsuit, you'll get the bill from the hospital, and let's just say you had $25,000 of billed charges. That's what the cash price would be. But if you had health insurance, or if you were on some type of government payer like Medicaid, Medicare, or TRICARE, they pay a discounted rate. So you could have a $25,000 medical bill, but in reality, only 8 of that is the real charge. And the way the law allows it is that the plaintiff can go ask for the full 25, but the defendant doesn't get to offer evidence that actually only 8 was charged by the hospital. So it creates this massive windfall for the plaintiff. And I got to tell you, it drives up settlements. I just negotiated a settlement. It was a slip and fall case in Missoula, where the charges were $25,000, and after the Medicaid discounts came in, I think the amount actually paid was around $10,000. But when I have to evaluate that on behalf of the insurance company, I have to use that total billed number and say, look, you could get a verdict off of that $25,000, it could be up to $75,000, $50,000 to $75,000 instead of using the real amount, which is 8, and then billing off of that. And you have to remember too, the other key part is that it's just not that charged amount, that full charged amount, it affects other things because the jury will base their award of things like pain and suffering, loss of established course of life, off of those numbers. So it's not uncommon to say the medical bills are $25,000, we're going to give you another $25,000. If the jury knew it was only 8, they would probably only award 8 in pain and suffering. So it has a big effect on what these cases are worth. So it affects obviously whether they're brought in the first place, and how much people are going to settle for, and that ultimately turns into effects on rates, insurance, and attorney costs as well. Because the more cases float around, the bigger the settlement value, the more people will spend on attorney's fees. So it has a ripple effect, not just on the actual amount paid, but on the whole case as a whole.
Great. Well, thanks for that explanation. Let's look ahead to next week. And what do you see next week for the two of you as kind of high profile bills, particularly those ones that, Bridger, that you consider priorities for the Montana Chamber?
Yeah, Todd, and as I've mentioned on these, I think for as many issues as we're in, I'm barely looking a couple days ahead. But I know that another one of our priority bills, that trespasser liability issue, to just from it, just on the whole, make it so that if you're a possessor of real property, you don't owe a duty of care to a trespasser, except in true cases of misconduct. We're going to have that bill hearing very soon to make the transmittal date. So I anticipate we would have a bill hearing on that before the next capital connection. But that's a big one for us. Senator, what else do you have in the pipeline? Yeah. Before
you go any further, can you explain that one a little bit more? I mean, when you talk about duty of care and all that, I think it would be helpful to give just a little bit more color on what that bill does.
I'm going to leave it to the attorney to explain duty of care.
That's good.
No, that's fine.
Explain it so that me as a non-attorney can understand it.
Sure. So many years ago, this is almost 25 years ago, the Montana Supreme Court ruled that a property owner owes a duty of care, and that just means you have a responsibility to ensure your premises are safe for anybody on the premises, and that includes people that are trespassing, people that you invite on the property, or people that you allow to use your property. So if somebody is crossing your land and you don't know it, but you could anticipate that they would be there, you could be sued if they had a slip and fall accident on their property. I mean, I think from my point of view, I don't understand why we owe a duty of care to trespassers. I don't think you should anticipate that somebody's going to break into your house. I mean, if you take it to its extreme analogy, somebody who's committing a crime comes into your house and they slip and fall on the way out from robbing you, they could sue you, and they say, well, you shouldn't have left the carpet that way. So, I mean, that's the extreme analogy. I realize that's probably a very unlikely scenario, but it's more for people cutting across somebody's land, walking where they shouldn't be, coming on. And a more common example would probably be people walking through your property at night, and they don't see something, and they're trespassing, they're walking in an area where they shouldn't be. So I think it's really unfair to say you owe a duty of care to a trespasser. So there are exceptions for kids. I mean, the kids are a little bit different story. Over the years, they've kind of carved out exceptions for children. But I think the way Bridger's got the bill written, it mimics more of what we do right now for recreational land, right, and in other types of land around the state of Montana. There's some, kind of more of it's kind of an assumption of risk type of thing, where you kind of assume the risk of injury instead of having this duty to anticipate the injury. Because, you think about it in scenarios. I mean, a regular person owns a chunk of land. you know, people may walk through it, but why should you have to go, you know, put up a bunch of fencing on a piece of ground that's, you know, out in the middle of nowhere, and then have somebody turn around and sue you because you didn't have a no posted sign on it. So, you know, it's really a fairness thing, I think, the property owners.
Great
I
explanation.
said
Thank you.
better myself.
Have you got another one there, Bridger? That you
No,
wanted
I
to
just said it could, I think that really hits the highlights coming up. Senator, do you have anything else you wanted to add as we close out the recorded portion of this?
Well, I mean, this is the time of the session where things are really getting busy. I mean, I wish I could tell you all the bills that are coming, but there's just a big volume. I think we're going to start to see some more tort liability bills floating around. Senator Hertz has one that we'll hear next week in business and labor. There's going to be some bills dealing with outfitters. We'll probably hear that in business and labor, but it's really, you know, the bills are starting to come out of drafting now at pretty heavy volume. So we're going to see more of those. You know, there's bills on subdivisions. There's just a lot of stuff that's kind of pent up demand, I think, from the last 16 years. I think pro-business bills that were never really able to get through the process. And I think we're going to start to see a lot of those now.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you, Senator Fitzpatrick, for joining us, and particularly thank you for your leadership on the COVID-19 liability bill. It's a big kind of shot of confidence to the business community as we start to emerge from this crisis, that, you know, they won't have the threat of litigation for doing the best job that they can in an unprecedented time. So thank you for that, and thank you, Bridger. We'll go ahead and